Demons by Dostoevsky is one of the greatest novels ever written by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and probably one of the greatest novels ever written, full stop. And when people talk about the demons, or sometimes it's translated as the possessed or the devils, they talk about it like it's a political novel. And I think that's true. It is a political novel on a surface, but for me, it's so much deeper than that. The more I read this book, the more I realized it's less about 19th century Russia and more about something completely timeless. This book is more about ideas and how ideas, good or bad, can possess people and take them away from their destiny, their faith, their moral compass, and completely absorb them, possess them like demons would. This resonated with me so much because our attention nowadays is grabbed by social media, news, people around us that could sound like they know what they're talking about, or they look like they know what they're talking about, but they will feed you ideas that you perhaps not always can fight off. In this video, I want to discuss a true crime story that inspired this book, Dostoevsky's own experiences with revolutionary ideas, the deep philosophical questions of this book, the infamous Censored Chapter of this book, and hopefully this will give you an idea why this novel is still so shocking, just like it has been when it was published 150 years ago. If you haven't read Demons, I will try to avoid major spoilers so you can really enjoy this book. But if you have, I really want to hear from you whether you agree with my opinion and what demons you have found in this book. So what kind of book is Demons? Demons is one of the 5 greatest novels written by Dostoevsky. There is actually 5 novels that are considered his top 5. Obviously, it's a subjective opinion. Maybe your top 5 would be different, but it's definitely one of his major works. The novel was published in 1872, and if you read the back cover, it will tell you that Demons is a political crime novel inspired by true events. According to my research, Dostoevsky got inspired to write this novel while he was traveling abroad with his wife, Anna. His wife, Anna, had a brother, and this brother went to a particular academy in Russia. And one of the students of this academy, Ivan Ivanov, has been killed by Sergei Nechayev and his accomplices. Dostoevsky's wife's brother knew the person that was killed and also knew few people that contributed to this murder. It's easy to tell that Dostoevsky loves crime. One of his greatest novels literally called Crime and Punishment. So of course, having that person that was so close to the victim and to perpetrators really inspired Dostoevsky to dig deeper into that topic. Of course, another reason why he was so fascinated by this crime is because it was somewhat politically motivated. When I started reading the novel, I realized it's not that simple. It's gonna get way more complicated than just a crime story and a detective story. And I was not wrong. There was love, there was philosophy, there was faith, there was relationships, there were mother and son relationships, father and son relationships, there were marriage, social constructs, and basically everything you can think of that the novel can include. So depending on what you love in literature, maybe you love philosophy part, it's going to be there. If you love love and relationships, it will be there. But also if you're fascinated by crime and you like that mystery in the novel, it's also going to be there. Like many Dostoevsky's novel, it's set in one town, one provincial town of Russia, and there is lots of movement between this town of different people and characters. And obviously you'll get to know this town quite well with different places, but it's also set in a short space of time, let's say few weeks or months, just like many of Dostoevsky's novels as well. So you do feel very much immersed into that situation. So moving on to the historical context, when you read in this novel and you realize it could be real people, a real situation, it's way more real. Like Dostoevsky's realism is not real enough, but it does make you think that this is not just a story to prove some kind of philosophical or political point. It is a real case with real people. So the characters in the book don't have the same name as the real people from historical context. Obviously, they've been changed and lots of their backgrounds has been added and replaced. But the main character that has inspired Dostoevsky is Sergei Nechayev. He is an actual person that was a Russian revolutionary active in 1860s in Russia. He was was a nihilist, he was very, very radical, and to not give you spoilers, why he wanted one of the students dead. And on the surface, it seems like, okay, maybe this person is just, crazy, he has lots of difficult ideas, and, his friends are the same, okay, they killed someone, maybe we shouldn't think too deeply about it. And that's what I thought. When I did deeper research, I realized that Sergei Nechayev was not just some kind of person that had a group of people he influenced. He was very anti-government. He believed that revolution justified everything, that, you could kill people, of course, if it means bringing your main goal to life. And how do we know them? Because he actually published all his ideas, and it was called Catechism of Revolutionary. It's an actual work where he describes in detail how you should act, how revolution should be executed, and so on. Lenin and other comrades of Lenin knew about this work. They read this work. They were inspired in some way by this work. We can't say, this person, Sergei Nechayev, created Lenin and revolution. No, but he was one of the catalysts. He was one of the people that created the ideas that followed later. And that's quite scary. Dostoevsky died in 19th century. He never knew what has happened to Russia. And for him, and this person seemed like an isolated person, but we now know it wasn't. That's why this novel is so scary, because it is so prophetic, it's so far-seeing, and I think Dostoevsky would be shocked knowing what has happened to his country. And that's why I think Dostoevsky realized this book is not just about a murder, it's about the ideas, it's about the mentality that spreads. Some people might think that Dostoevsky was against revolutionary ideas or modern ideas, liberal ideas, because he criticizes the main characters in the book. But again, that would be just very on a surface explanation. To explain how Dostoevsky felt about people changing Russia or bringing new ideas, we need to dig deeper into his own autobiography. And what you need to know about Dostoevsky in context of political movements is that when he was younger, he did attend a few revolutionary groups, but I don't think they were like, we're gonna kill the Tsar kind of groups, not like, let's plot a revolution. More intellectual groups where people discuss different ideas, they discuss what's happening in Europe, they discuss different philosophers, and so on. And I think that's pretty healthy in our modern society, but of course in Russia, where there is one Tsar, that could be seen quite dangerous. So he was attending one of those circles. Repressions were getting very, very strict in Russia, and they decided to prosecute him and other people of this group. He was not the founder of this group, but the founder, the other members, they were all prosecuted, despite the fact that Dostoevsky was already quite famous in Russia. And he was put in jail. He was asked to give away the details, and it was a very, very tedious process for him. And the most horrible thing is that he was given a death sentence, and it involved him actually going outside, doing all the rituals, the guards loading the guns, for the actual death sentence being read to him and for others. And he probably, for sure, he thought he was going to die. And plot twist, a few seconds later, the letter from the Tsar arrives and the execution is cancelled and they were given mercy. That sounds crazy, but this is the life of Dostoevsky, the actual event that happened. And instead of execution, he was given 4 to 5 years in Katorga prison camp in Siberia, and then another 4 to 5 years in exile, which is horrible, but better than obviously a death sentence. And of course, he has met a lot of people that were accused of revolutionary ideas. He has met a lot of prisoners. He's seen a lot of people that committed crime. We need to understand, when he was writing this novel, he was no longer this young, very positive person that is very liberal and excited about revolution. He has seen that there is a Tsar, there is liberal movements, and that two cannot exist together, and for one to win, a lot of violence needs to happen. And he was really against that. That's why I think that we can really trust Dostoevsky understanding what it's like to be on both sides of liberal movements in Russia during this time. Now that you understand the political and historical context of the book, I want to tell you a little bit more about the philosophical side. And to explain the philosophical side, we can start with the title of the book. So I read this book in Russian because I speak Russian even though I'm not from Russia. And the title of the book in Russian is Besi. And of course I knew that in English this book is commonly known as The Demons or The Devils. And I know that sometimes it's translated as a possessed as well. Speaking English and Russian, I don't think that Besi, the Russian word, is demons in English. And I think that maybe it is for someone who knows the demons as a biblical word, but in our day-to-day understanding of demons is something internal that you are fighting, or a demon is something huge, like kind of like a devil for many people. But in Russian, Besi, it goes deeper into that. It's more of a kind of evil spirit. And I've done some research. I don't think Bes is actually translated as best into English, but it's a very specific creature. It's more like an evil spirit that possesses you. It's a smaller force. It's not like a huge devil or demon. It's not, the evil force that is fighting the humanity. It's more like small things that possess you, but you can fight off, and that can be exerted from you. So I think that the title of the book already contains so much of the idea of the book, because it's all about those evil spirits, evil forces that consume your mind. You become possessed. You don't know how to control yourself. Your actions are probably corrupt by those Besi or demons, and so on. And I value translations. I value translations so much, but this is just one little thing where translation misses out. And I think that if we have to translate it, I would call it the evil spirits or the possessed, probably better to explain what it means. Because if you think about it as demons, you would think that demons are the characters in the book. And I think that a lot of people thought that, and having done some research, I realized that during Soviet times, some Soviet leaders wanted to have a monument on Dostoevsky. The legend goes that they were like, so what would we put on the statue? We would put "from demons." So basically like saying that revolutionary people are demons. But I don't think that's what Dostoevsky meant. He didn't mean that people are demons. He meant that the ideas, the things that consume our mind, they possess us. We are not demons. We have choices. We can take different paths. We can find faith, and any time we can be cured, but those things need to be extracted from us. So Besi is the corrupted spirits inside your head or your soul that infect your morals, that make you weak, that inspire bad actions from you, that create chaos in your head, that distort your thinking. This is a true title of the book. And when you understand what Besi means, you realize it's so much more than just a political novel. So what this book is about then? We have this political event, crime, that has happened, and we have other characters around it. And I read one bad review of this book that said, why there are so many characters? We didn't have to have all these other characters. We can just have this crime and people, witnesses of the crime, and that would be enough. That would prove the point. But I think that's where this review is completely wrong. You need all these characters, because the political idea is just one of the demons, one of the best. We have so many other demons, except that political radical movements. We have pride, we have ego, we have possession, we have like obsession with love or with lust in some way, lack of morality, we have lack of emotional intellect, and so on. First you would think that they're all just politically possessed. No, there is way deeper forces inside them that made them politically corrupt. And many characters really didn't care about politics very much. They were just so empty inside. They lost their faith, they lost their morality, that a lot of things possessed them that probably didn't need their attention. They had to go back to what is right for them, maybe love, support, giving back to society, loving people around them, helping people around them. But they didn't want to do that because they wanted power. They wanted to be famous in some ways. They wanted recognition. And that's not the things that Dostoevsky thinks we should be going for. There are way more primary things that we should care about. And maybe in some way he does give us the answer in terms of faith. But if you someone who doesn't like the church or doesn't like to be pushed into Orthodox church ideology, I would have good news for you. I didn't feel like this novel is just simply telling you the answer to everything is God. Of course, there is a lot of discussion about the God, and there is some kind of Orthodox tradition because it's part of Russia's life back in the day. But I don't think Dostoevsky is just telling you, read the Bible and you're going to be saved. He says that you need faith, and faith is so many different things. It doesn't have to be just go to church and pray. It's more deeper than that. It's about your moral grounds, your values, and where you see yourself on earth. And all of these topics are explored through different characters, as I said. So we have this political group and we have all other characters around them, and they all have different relationships, and they will tell us that all of them have different demons, and some of them fight them, some of them don't, some get possessed, and how it all works together. One of the strongest evidence that supports my point that this novel is not just about political demons is that we have a main character, Stavrogin. Stavrogin is not inspired by Sergei Nechayev, but Stavrogin is another main character of the book, male figure. Eventually we learn that he doesn't have any political ideologies that drive him. He really couldn't be bothered about any of them. And his demons are way deeper than that. It's inability to believe into anything, inability to connect with anyone, inability to love, not having any moral grounds. And that is the main character of the book. And this character is really painful to watch because he has everything on paper. He's good looking, he's intelligent, he has money, and you would think, wow, this person can really make something amazing for society, or he can, have a good life, maybe fall in love with a woman, he can respect his parents and give back to his town, but none of this happens. And I think this character was really needed because Dostoevsky wanted to dig deeper into different demons of humanity and how deep they can penetrate you, no matter who you are as a person. And having read about Dostoevsky's process of writing this book, I realized that first he did treat this novel as a crime novel. He wrote this novel, completely based around the Sergei Nechayev case, and he had Peter Verhovinsky as a Sergei Nechayev as an interpretation of Sergei in the book. And he was on a short deadline because Dostoevsky had a lot of deadlines, a lot of money problems. He was a gambler in some way, and obviously it was not easy to support his family when you had these addictions. So he did have a deadline, and he was paid per page. And he wrote half of this book, and then he scrapped it despite the fact that, he was tight on the deadline. And he realized, look, it's not right. It's not right to just have it as a political movement. I don't feel the connection. He apparently scrapped the half of the book where it was just a political movement and started to introduce other characters like Stavrogin and his mother and so on, because he realized, I think, in my opinion, that you can't just have this little isolated incident without digging deeper into what's happening in our society, what's happening with people, what's happening with other demons that we are fighting. That's why I think the novel feels so relevant today, because we don't live in pre-revolutionary Russia anymore, but people are so vulnerable. I'm so vulnerable to psychological and ideological possessions. We consume information all the time. We find it hard to fight some of the demons. We find it hard to decide what we believe deep down. We have all this, people say brain rot, but in some way it is a modern description of demons where you kind of become like foggy and you don't know what you believe deep down. You don't know what information was given to you, what is right, what you believe in, where you're going, and that is really, really scary. And that's why this book inspired me not to really be scared of political ideas, but more focused on inner strengths, your faith, whatever it is, finding your grounds, or knowing how to critically think. That's the most important thing. How to make sure that you can block those demons, obviously figuratively, know when to filter out the information, know when to stop consuming, and know what is really important in life, and working on yourself, most importantly, every day, and fighting off these demons, because I think that's really, really hard work, and I don't think that it ever stops, unfortunately. And like this book couldn't be more intriguing enough, there is something very interesting that I found out after I read the book that there was a hidden chapter, or there is a hidden chapter. So basically, when Dostoevsky was writing this novel, he had one chapter about Stavrogin that I already mentioned, that character, the main character, one of the main characters. And there was a very important chapter about this character where he tells us a little bit more about his background. I will not give out the spoilers. And the book that I purchased, because I live abroad, it was just like the only one available. I chose it based on the paper and size of the font. It didn't have this hidden chapter. I didn't know it existed. I read the whole book. I made my opinion about the character without this chapter. When I was doing the research for this video and digging deeper into this book, I realized there is a hidden chapter. And why this chapter was removed? Because it had some concerning things in it. It was censored in Russia. The publisher for Dostoevsky said it's too graphic or it's too horrible to be published. I will not publish it. Dostoevsky tried to rewrite it. He tried to make it less scary, let's say, and it was still not approved. And eventually Dostoevsky published it without this chapter. Another point to mention is this book was published like chapter by chapter in a literature journal in Russia. So Dostoevsky knew how he was ending the book, and he knew that the hidden chapter or that chapter was removed. So I think that's important. And now we have different versions. I know that some books publish it as the hidden chapter as appendix. Some put it directly into the body of the book where it's supposed to be going. And in my opinion, I think since Dostoevsky knew that the hidden chapter is not going into production, and he lived for many years after this book was published as a whole edition, and he didn't make those changes, I think that we need to accept it without the hidden chapter, because that's how Dostoevsky knew we were going to read it. So he might have made the ending different and so on. But at the same time, I don't think we should ignore this chapter. So I read it afterwards, and I treated this chapter as a prequel or as a sequel, something that you can consume on its own. And it's definitely worth consuming and worth reading. But at the same time, just my honest suggestion, maybe it's bias, read it without it and then read it, because that's how the novel should be consumed. Because I think that's actually a little bit like real life. You will never know everything about the person you're dealing with. You will not have all the information, and you can decide on Stavrogin without having all the information, and then you can check your understanding of the character after you read this hidden chapter. That's just my opinion, to make it more interesting for you. I want to end with one of the ideas from this book, from one of the characters. He says, "People are unhappy because they don't know they're happy. That's the only reason. If they realized it, they would become happy immediately." It sounds absurd, right? It sounds like stop being sad and be happy and then you will not be depressed. But if we take it more philosophically, if we don't take it on the surface of mental health, but take it more of our own concept of understanding of our life, I think that this thought becomes less absurd. We are fed lots of ideas, images, constant information of how our life should be, how we should look, what we should eat, where we should live, what political opinion we should have, that we forget to look around and realize that we might have a lot of things we should be happy about. So I feel like a lot of our anxiety, a lot of the loneliness, a lot of doubts that we have is because we don't realize we already have so much. This is just what resonates with me. I'm not saying that it might resonate with you. Of course, I know that everyone has different struggles in life, but overall, I think that many of the things that bother us day to day are really trivial demons that we should fight. This is pretty much what I wanted to say about this book. I know I didn't have a lot of time to go into philosophical ideas, but I really hope I inspired you to read it, to reread it, to do your research, to tell me whether you think this book is about us, this play is about us, or do you think that it's actually just about Sergei Nechayev and his people. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. See you in the next video.